Hey, so it's time for another battle report. As some of you might know, Dread Elves, Dark Elves used to be the army that I played in Warhammer times. And yeah, I struggle a bit finding my way in getting some nice Dread Elf lists on the table. I have a couple, but they don't really play in the way that I would like to see the army work. But anyway, I thought I would just give it another try. So here's a Dread Elf army list, just with some magic support, with some infantry, with some knights, and with some shooting. I think it's a well-rounded list, at least on paper, but we'll see how it goes on the table. This faced off against a Kingdom of Equitaine list. This is a list with two Peasant Crusader blocks that provide the army with some blocks that are steadfast. So the idea behind the list is that you can push these forwards and then use them as anvils and then use your knights as hammers. But we'll see how it goes. So on to the battle report. For spells, my Wizard Adept took Raven's Wing and Deceptive Glamour, and the Wizard Master took Truth of Time, Perception of Strength, Unity and Divergence, and Touch of the Heart. And after the battle I realized that probably it's better to have a Wizard Master on Witchcraft and a Wizard Apprentice on, or Wizard Adept on Cosmology. Because Truth of Time and Perception of Strength are the most important spells in Cosmology, I believe. And then you can get the random movement spell out of Witchcraft, and I think that's also a very good spell, together with the spell that shuts down some enemy shooting. My opponent has Shamanism, and he took Break the Spirit Totemic Summon, which is kind of standard if you have a Wizard Master, I think. And then to supplement it, he took Chilling Howl and Swarm of Insects. The deployment type we had was Refused Flank, and for the secondary objective we had Capture the Flags. So as you can see from the armies, I have a little bit less scoring in my army than my opponent, so that's going to be quite an easy objective for me. And yeah, Refused Flank, I'm not really excited about it, just because the backspace you have in your deployment is quite small, so this I realized it probably also during this game that this seems to favor armies that don't really use any flee mechanics, because especially on these parts where you're at the edges of your deployment, you don't have any space to perform any flee maneuvers. And yeah, you don't have a lot of space to play with, really. So it's really a weird way to make use of the space on the board, I would say. Like, if you would tilt it 45 degrees and just play it horizontally with 18-inch deployment zones, then you would still have a lot of more effective space on the table. Because basically now in the middle of the field, you have these corners of the deployment zone that you don't really get to use, whilst you decrease the table space that you have along the rest of the line. So for the deployment, yeah, we are just dropping unit by unit basically. So I started with my Dark Raiders and with my Harpies, and at this point I was really unsure what to do with my deployment. I also put a bolt thrower already in ruins because it just has a lot of targets from there. But I didn't really want to commit to any flank, but in hindsight I think I should have, because yeah, this is not really the army that suits this deployment, so I should have just gone for first turn and moved up. But on the other hand, my opponent threats very far also with his unit, so if he's going to stand on the 18-inch line, then yeah, I can't really afford any turn 1 charges. He can, and he can also react if I move forward out of my deployment zone. Yeah, so I was a bit conflicted about this deployment. Anyway, So we have the Raptor Chariot standing now, and some Dark Acolytes are going there. Yeah, so my opponent is also not really committing yet to any part of the board, but yeah, it's kind of obvious that one of his units is going to be right of the forest, one of the units is going to be left of the forest, and the Peasant Crusaders that he still has left are going to be in the forest. So I could also have just deployed everything and given him the first turn. But probably he would go for the first, yeah, well, depending on the blessing or not. He might have gone for the first turn. Yeah, so I don't really, I wasn't really feeling well about this. So what I also walked into is that in the list I have this, the Legionnaire unit with the Academy banner, which gives other Legionnaire units within 6 inches +1 armor penetration. And this gives you a very high incentive, or well, an incentive to put these infantry units close together. But in the army that I'm now playing, I actually didn't want the units to be close together at all. So I felt like it forced me to put them a bit more together, because otherwise, yeah, you're just wasting the potential there. But I think it was a bit of a trap, maybe. Because basically in your deployment you want to space your units at places where you really want them, and then having this one extra AP luring you to putting your infantry close together, it can work, but I think it's mostly useful for armies where you can fit in multiple of these units together, where they interact with each other. So that it's a bit like Empire Parent Support. You can either play it in with a single parent unit, a couple of support units, or you can play it in the sense that you have so many parent and support units that there is always a support unit close to a parent unit. Yeah, so the last thing I still have to deploy are the Raven Cloaks, and I struggle a little bit with this. So mostly because I didn't go for the drop and I don't have the first turn, so I have to protect them way more than if I had the first turn, because had I had the first turn I could have moved out way more aggressively with them. Like one unit could have gone on the left flank just to push off the Grail Knights and have some first turn shooting. And so this is how the deployment turned out, and I can safely say that this is not the most, well, the best deployment that I've ever made. But it's difficult to me to judge where the strength of the Dread Elves really lies. Like, yeah, these Dread Legionnaires, they're nice and well, but they don't really put out that much damage. The Dread Knights say they pack a punch, but mostly when they charge. I think it's a difficult army to. At least during deployment, I already encountered that it's a more challenging army. So then we go to first turn. My opponent has the first turn after this, and he declares quite a lot of charges. So first off is Grail Knights against the Dark Raiders. Dark Raiders flee, and then his character charges into the Dark Raiders, and then they flee off the table. So some people would say that this is a bit of a waste of your Dark Raiders, and I could agree to that, but in this specific situation I thought it wasn't, because I lure out his charge of his character towards my Dread Knights. So if I can trade my Dark Raiders for his character, then I'm all set. And then it also means that the Dread Knights are going to be closer to his backfield, and it really frees up some space for my army. Unfortunately, he makes the charge. He manages to redirect his character to my Dread Knights, and it's a 19-inch charge. And he makes the charge on 11. He also makes a charge on 11 at the Dark Acolytes with his questing knights. So this is looking good, yeah. Yeah. He declared 4 first turn charges, and just 2 of them made it. They were on 11, so that was kind of lucky. yeah, I was counting on maybe one charge making it in, and that wouldn't have been too bad, I think. Like if it's Knights of the Realm would have made it in, I would have been very glad about that, because I believe they also charged the Dark Acolytes. Yeah, so if they had made it in, then the Dark Acolytes would be gone, probably. He would overrun into my Legionnaires. I could flank him with my other unit of Legionnaires. Yeah, probably he would win this first turn of combat, but then afterwards, stuff could happen. He would be There would be a chance that he would lose his Wizard Master, and there would be a big chance that my Legionnaires with Wizard would still be on the field, and then I would be up for a counter charge with my Raven Cloaks. And yeah, I wasn't really worried about that charged. Otherwise, he's just advancing. And you can see a little bit of the power of these Peasant Crusaders. So they are located on the spots where these dark triangle or dark squares are. So both are on the hill, and yeah, they do force me to play a bit differently than if they were not there. Like if you had another unit of knights, then the matchup would be quite different. So now basically these Crusaders, they enable him to get the pressure really on. Because if I charge in, then I'll be counter-charged by some knights. Yeah. So this is how it's looking, and yeah, now we're gonna go on to magic. So for magic, he has the shamanism spells. The one I worry most about whenever I play against shamanism is the totemic summon, because not only does it give you a 2d6 strength 3 breath weapon anywhere on the field, it also gives you a monstrous infantry model that is quite hard to shift and is unbreakable. And being able to come up anywhere on the board, it allows you to put it in the rear of a unit where the offensive power of the unit is mostly limited to about 4 attacks, which is not even sufficient to, well, it's theoretically sufficient to kill the model, but realistically it's impossible. So yeah, I usually against shamanism I just keep my dice for the totemic summon. This does result in him getting a chilling howl on my Dread Reaper. So my Dread Reaper is at a -1 to hit. My Raven Cloaks are in a position where they can't really get out, or they would really go back into the backfield. And then with Chilling Howl, or with Swarm of Insects, he actually manages to get rid of the other Dread Reaper. Yeah, so this is a bit of a catastrophic turn 1, isn't it? Yeah. At this point I was wondering how this game would continue for more than 3 turns. So then we go to combat. The Dark Acolytes actually managed to save quite a lot of wounds, and I only lose 1 of them. And then when they strike back, they only kill 1 questing knight. However, they do decide to flee away, and they are called by the questing knights. That's why they're gone. The questing knights overrun to the flank of my Dread Legionnaires. I'm not really afraid of these 6 questing knights at this moment, really, because you can countercharge with the Dread Legionnaires a little bit more to the bottom, provided that the Raptor Chariot charges away. And then the other combat where his character went into my Dread Knights, the champion did a challenge. He manages to smack my champion. I'm steadfast, so I'm happy. And then we go to my turn. I only have the Raptor Chariot charging and the Dread Legionnaires. And then for the rest, yeah, it's not ideal. These Peasant Crusaders are too close to my lines. I don't have any space in my field to play around. I feel just cropped up, really, congested. And on the left flank is looking a little bit better, but still, it's everywhere on the board where I just lack a couple of units even. Like on the left, I only have my Dread Legionnaires available. But also, yeah, if my opponent hadn't had the charge on an 11, then my Dread Knights would have been able to charge something there. So then the field would have been quite different indeed. But right now on the left flank I just have my Dread Legionnaires. It's not going to cut it. In the middle I practically still just only have 2 units of Dread Legionnaires, and some people are very enthusiastic about Spear Elves. But the Dread Elf ones, they only fight in 3 ranks, and most people just consider the High Elf ones, I believe. When they think about them, which, yeah, 20 attacks is definitely scary. 15 attacks, I wouldn't say it's that scary after all. So, because if you get into a grind, and most opponents are still gonna grind you out, I think. And on if you go for the offense, then yeah, it's just 15 strength, 3 attacks with AP2. Yeah. Then on the right, yeah, there's the matchup between the Peasant Crusaders and the Dread Knights. It's just gonna be a grind fest, and it's gonna be dicey. Yeah, so I really struggle to see how this army should win this matchup. Even though Kingdom of Equitaine is definitely not the most powerful army out there. Yeah. So if I think about Kingdom of Equitaine, I see knights, and I see plenty of knights. But the issue I have with them is that all of their knights hit on 4+ normally. Without any help, without any hatred. You can get a Rod of Battle 4+1 to hit, sure. But your opponent's gonna probably dispel it. You can get a reroll of 1s to hit. True. But the power is not really in the offensive output of the knights, I would say. Because even if you've managed to put a full bus of knights into something, you're gonna have 6 hits if you have 12 attacks. So, so what happens on the board? My Dread Legionnaires, they flank the questing knights, and they actually managed to mow down 4 of them. So that's mostly because of the AP3 on the AP2 on the charge of the spears. And I do not manage to catch him. My Wizard Banker stays behind my other unit of Dread Legionnaires, trying to chase the questing knights with the BSB. And then otherwise the Raptor Chariot goes to town, and it it has 7 impact hits, and it has 7 wounds, and none of them are saved. And then the crew adds 2 wounds, and the Cold ones add 1 wound. So I do 10 wounds with a Raptor Chariot, which is impressive. I was impressed. I'm gonna field that one again. That specific Raptor Chariot. And yeah, the Dread Knights, they just hustle around with this character. Nothing really happens there. So yeah, this is also kind of funny. So my main offensive power is in the knights in this army. His main offensive power is in the knights, and we both have some initial high strength attacks. But then after the first turn, then the high strength is practically gone. He only has 6 questing knights left. So that's the only strength in his, or sustainable strength in his army. So it's all about the rolls if you have knights against knights, because sometimes you might roll just 111 on your saves, and then yeah, everything flips around. Which is also one of the reasons that knight armies are less popular, I think, than infantry armies. Or infantry-based armies with a lot of monsters. Yeah, so, well, one lucky thing that still happened in my turn that I should mention is that I shot off a unit of Grill Knights on the left with the Dread Reaper that was still standing. So 5 hits, 3 wounds, no saves, done. That was good for me, not for my opponent. But on the right flank, he also has a unit of Grail Knights. They're going to charge into my Raven Cloaks. My Raven Cloaks stand and shoot, but it doesn't work. Also, the shooting didn't work. Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. His Knights, Aspirant, they go into the Raptor Chariot. And then his Questing Knights went into my Dread Knights on the hill. Well, the hill is a 3D hill. So it was quite a bit of a struggle to put the knights there, so we just put them beside. But the questing knights are in contact with the dread knights. And realistically, at this point in the game, I don't have a lot going for me anymore because, well, both knight units have been engaged and they are down for a grind. The Raptor Chariot is not going to pull its weight against the Pilgrims and the Knights Aspirant. But in his close combat phase, he actually doesn't manage to wound any of the Knights anywhere. So I get to countercharge with my Dread Legionnaires. And also I charged his BSB with my Dread Legionnaires. Just hoping for, I believe, an 8 on the roll. If I were to get the 8, I could align it so that I could get an overrun on Knights of the Realm, and that would still be possibly a game changer. So my opponent thought about fleeing with his BSB, but then the Knights Errant have to take a discipline test on a 7. They would have to flee away from the Dread Knights on the right because they are the closest enemy. And then I could charge again on the BSB, probably with my Raven Cloaks on the top right, so just to chase him off the board. So he elected to stand and hope for a bad charge roll on my side, which actually happened. The Raven Cloaks, they are set up to shoot at the Knights Aspirant, just to try and induce a panic check. That's going to be a discipline 7. Because the BSB is still fleeing and the general is, I believe, outside of 12 inches. And yeah, otherwise for magic, there's a couple of spells that are interesting. The most interesting one I thought at this time was Truth of Time, just to make sure that one of his models cannot charge me. Yeah, so I was thinking in a bit of a weird way here, I think. So my wizard bunker is obviously in charge range of his Knights of the Realm. So his Knights of the Realm are going to charge there, his BSB is going to charge there probably. Well, if the Knights of the Realm make it, then I'm kind of screwed. So I was thinking, well, from the Knights of the Realm I have to flee away anyway, because I can't hold this charge. Mostly because of the impact hits. And whilst I do some wounds back, probably I'm not going to do sufficient to remain steadfast myself. So I decide to cast Truth of Time actually on the BSB, because I would flee from the Knights of the Realm anyway, and then if the BSB also charges me, then I'm going to flee further, but I'd rather have him have the Truth of Time so that he cannot catch up with me. So I'm just hoping for some low flee rolls for my unit. And in retrospective, maybe this was the wrong answer. I probably should have gone for a Truth of Time on the Knights of the Realm. Because if they don't make it, then my opponent can't really charge in his... it's too risky for him to charge in his BSB. And maybe just against the Knights of the Realm it could be fine. So unfortunately at this point in the game the recording stopped for some reason, and we both didn't realize that it had stopped, so unfortunately this is the end of the camera recording. For the rest of the game my opponent did charge into my wizard bunker, and I fled, and then he charged with the knights with the BSB, and I just made it off the table with a 9-inch flee roll. So unfortunately that turned out pretty bad for me, losing my general, my wizard, master wizard adept. But for the rest of the game my dread knights on the left still managed to pull their weight and kill his hero, and my Dread Legionnaires on the left also survived. The rest of the Dread Elves all died. So the Ravencloaks on the top right, they got charged by the Knights Aspirant, and on the stand and shoot they removed nothing. And then in combat with the 7 great weapon attacks, they killed 3 of the Knights Aspirant before they could strike, so that was impressive. But then my opponent continued to kill, I believe, also 3 or 4 of mine. They broke and were run down. And then, well, the rest of my units also. So the Dread Legionnaires on the right, they also still died. The Dread Reaper and the Ruins died. On the bottom they died. And the Raptor Chariot also got removed. But in the end, in terms of points, we had a 1500 point difference advantage to Kingdom of Equitaine. But as he had a lot of scoring units, I was able to kill a lot of scoring units. Had it been any other scenario, he would have won the scenario, but this scenario was for me. So in the end, it still was a 11-9. And considering how the first turn went, I wasn't too dissatisfied with just a very minor loss. I hope you liked this video, and see you in the next one.